Now that Power Rangers is basically over for the time being, I wanted to make a definitive video on every team up done. Some team up episodes were considered two separate episodes rather than two-parters. I'm going to combine those, and I'm also not going to count every Cosmic Fury episode. Now this will be a rating from the lowest to the highest. Legendary Battle. Which brings me to the Legendary Battle. It insults virtually everyone. You had a 20th anniversary coming up for 2 years. You picked a good group of characters to come back. On top of all the characters that they chose and picked, there was no time. You had no build up. The team up had no team up. They only appeared in the final act. On top of which, because they decided to put it in the season finale of Megaforce. The writers just wrote generic lines, and honestly, you could have picked and choose who you wanted to be in these scenes. Nothing. Clash of the Red Rangers. Clash of the Red Rangers. Unlike the Shinkenger Goenja team up in Super Sentai, which was a decent, this was the only return of Scott. Even if Scott appeared on screen and whatnot, this still would have been a bad episode. The main problem is they combined two Shinkenger movies into this. I get it, you had limitations. RPM is from a different world, so you can't just pull RPM into Samurai with all these weird complications. But the plot line was stupid because you had to combine two unrelated movies together when you could have just adapted the team up special. Obviously, I know, like I said, the other RPM Rangers did not appear, so they couldn't use the footage, but I would have been happy to include more scenes with Scott. I think the main problem was they were forced to make this a movie instead of just making a one episode team up for Scott. He'd come in, similar to how like Justin came in for that one episode in space, see what he's up to, what's going on. It helped in the confirmation of RPM being in a different universe, which is fine. The piss poor, like, oh, we went to the RPM dimension and they say hi. It was just an insult on top of insult on top of footage that didn't matter. By just looking at it by plot, footage uses, and the lack of, Scott being Scott, it was a very disappointing team up. Shellshock. Now, Shellshock, I didn't have a problem with the whole, well, it's a team up with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and as long as you utilize them in a very decent way. At that point, no one really cared about TMNT. Yeah, it was a kind of a cool idea to have them live action again. Another reason why it felt very shoehorned in is because the TMNT show barely started when it actually aired. Not to mention it was also shoehorned in at the beginning of Space fairly early. So you have all these mishmash of problems. The jokes didn't really hit. They felt more annoying than it was worth. If they gave more effort into the story and left the show later on, so like we were further into the TMNT show and in Space, maybe it would have worked out better. Honestly, we had like devolved back into a Power Rangers Turbo episode. Dimensions in Danger. Dimensions in Danger. Overall, I liked the cast that they picked. All the characters came back and all of them felt fairly fine. And, I hadn't have a problem with Tommy being here and having the Master Morpher. And yeah, again, it was another season that was a disappointment. But the biggest issue was that there was no time for anyone. I don't have a problem with Tommy being a focal point. He had the most powers, is the most popular. The problem is you picked so many freaking guest characters and they didn't have any time for development. I mean, Rocky came back after skipping 2 anniversaries and he comes in and then does nothing. Yeah, okay, they use more elements of past PR seasons compared to before. Like, they usually don't get to do Zord stuff that often, so it was cool to see the Falcon Zord. And I did like the premise of, these bad guys kind of just duplicated / cloned Rangers into an evil army and they're going to take over multiple dimensions. That was a cool premise. Not to mention the Ninja Steel portion of it felt shoehorned in because, this is supposed to be a team up episode, but instead they wasted I think it was 5 to 8 minutes of ninja footage to put into the episode when it could have been about showing us what was going on with Rocky or, Megaforce, anything. They just squandered those extra minutes for filler footage requirements. A friend in need. This suffered the same problem as Shellshock. I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of Masked Rider. None of these characters clicked with me. I didn't even like the villains, and I thought starting off with Black RX was weird, but also when they brought in all the other Masked Riders, it was overload. Can you imagine MMPR Season 1 and them using the anniversary footage, seeing all these random Rangers? You'd be getting confused all over the place. MMPR Season 2 ended, and I was waiting to see where this series was going to go. Instead, we got a big advertisement for this show. Tying Alpha to Edenoi? Fine. There was nothing wrong with that, but it became a nothing burger quick. It's so unimportant, even Cosmic Fury doesn't use the planet's name anywhere. The episodes just felt like info dumping the whole premise of Masked Rider. While my 9-year-old self wants to see Season 3, I know they're getting new Zords, so my head is not with Dax. And because they had to film basically everything, they were stuck in deserts and a few other locales. I wish Dax had been used to be the one who helped the Rangers get their new Ninjetti powers, acting as a replacement for Dulcia. Dax locates Ninjor, then in the third part, go to Edenoi and have the Rangers fight the first few monsters from RX. Have the two shows help each other rather than just being one-sided. The Pois Show. Now, the Pois Show was one of those Ninja Steel episodes where, like, okay, we have the two brothers that were Rangers in two different series, so let's put them together. It was an okay episode. It seems that whenever they give one Ranger to come back, it works much more better because they have a whole bunch of time to do it. It doesn't feel as rushed. Even though it was a very dumb, weird episode because, again, the Dino Charge guys came back again after their billionth time of dying, and the only disappointment I had is they just didn't get enough time to each other where they can work off each other, because Coda is such a perfect character that you would love to see him in these type of situations because, since he's a caveman, there's a lot to go there. Like, you might feel something weird or goofy or funny, kind of like how Goku is in Dragon Ball. He's that, very airhead type of character. You throw him into an odd situation and it will be crazy, like in that whole, the driving episode. Preston and Coda would have felt the same way if they had allowed them to do more unique things in the episode. Rangers of Two Worlds. There's two reasons why I didn't care for this team up. They decided to use the Sentai footage, and the monster was this really stupid pink thing. MMPR went out of their way to not use the weirder minions from Die Ranger and Conquer Ranger, but this giant pink marshmallow was fine. And second, the crappy end for Billy. If we're gonna have a departure of a character, I want to see the actor leave the show and get a good send-off. But just like Aisha, we had an old guy replace David Yost. But it was a good move on the show's part putting this in the team-up, so I got lost in the spectacle. Those parts of the story I like, that's why this is in choice 18. But looking back, if Billy was made the 6th Ranger, this story would have worked so much better. The powers are causing the aging problem, the triplets are unable to separate the powers, so the Aquitar Rangers come in. Billy gets one more go. Once he's split from the powers, Trey gets to be the Gold Ranger for the final episodes. I don't watch this team up often with Hog Day Afternoon and Turbo's movie for how junk the characters left the show. Operation Seasoning. Operation Seasoning, basically the redemption arc of Heckle from Dino Charge. And overall, if you don't look at the rest of Cosmic Fury, for what it did for Heckle, it was an okay episode. I like that, okay, we finally got to see his suit. He was there to help out in the overall story, to rescue the people who were captured. Heckle was badly hurt as a character in Dino Charge. He had potential of being a really good villain. Then all of a sudden it was just like, whoop, we went right back to what we were doing with Sledge and being stupid villains of the week and everyone acting ridiculous and dumb. Why did we switch villains in Dino Charge when it was just the exact same crap that you gave us? And the only negative I had was that I wish he wasn't removed after one episode and he should have stayed on for another one at minimum. True Blue to the rescue. Now, True Blue to the rescue was kind of a surprising team-up episode because, like I said, in, always talking about Turbo, Justin was such a bad character, and it's no fault of the actor at all. It's just, there was a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes of why they did this character, but they just didn't know what to do with him. Out of nowhere, Justin was a character. One episode kind of fixed him, decent degree where it's like, wow, Justin, I wish you acted like this, because he felt like a human being. He felt like a young kid growing up. And then he learned from the experiences he was through Turbo on top of it. Even though you're risking your life day by day as being a Power Ranger, there'll always be something in the back of your head that will miss it. Whether it's you love the gear, you love the suit, you love well, they don't really have fame in the normal sense. You love using all that stuff, but also the aspect of, saving the earth, protecting people. And they used the core elements of what was positive about the character, TJ and Justin's friendship. And that's hard to pull off, because a lot of times kids in shows like this suck in general. It's kind of a shame that he just never appeared in any other team up ever since. I really wish we could get an adult Justin to come back in the show. Trinas Revenge. Now, Trinas Revenge, this was like one of the few times that Power Rangers adapted the Super Sentai team up. They don't usually do that because in Lost Galaxy, Mike lost his powers. But in Ginga Man, Hyuga didn't lose his powers. He was there, they had a cut around him, so that made it awkward. Overall, I thought this was a decent team up. It could have been better. Yeah, I think the main issue was a lot of things didn't really make any sense. All of a sudden, there was this modern city on Miranoid. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. How can they do that within 1 year? Because of all the heavy editing, it was like the reverse in this case. There was a lot of good stuff when they were civilians, but very little when they were, their Ranger cells, because of so much had to be edited out. And honestly, the little girl could have been just cut out. She had no purpose, bar that one little scene of pulling the fire alarm. This is the one thing that I hated about the team up. All the other seasons where they always try to keep their identities a secret, it would have kind of made sense to use the little girl in that case to pull the fire alarm. But because everyone knows Carter are Power Rangers, he can go in and order the evacuation of the building, especially because they're owned by a military organization. Those little things just annoy me out of the story.
History and Wormhole.
History and Wormhole. The only thing I hated about this one was because Wormhole was temporarily exclusive to the DVD because it came out on DVD first. That's the reason why Wormhole wasn't aired properly. It got skipped over. So History aired a long time before, and then all of a sudden Wormhole came out right before I think it was Mystic Force started. But as the team up episodes, I thought they were a very solid episodes. It was cool because they had to deal with the conundrum of, well, SPD is 20 plus years into the future, and well, we don't want to have old Connor, old Kira, and Ethan. So they were like, okay, we're gonna do a whole time travel thing and push them forward. So it was a cool way to incorporate them. They return the favor where the SPD Rangers go back to the past. A future look at the characters, which they rarely ever do, because usually whenever there's a team up, yeah, there's been a year past, but we really don't know anything that happens with them. So it's cool to see what was going on in their lives. Although the team up was kind of a double-edged sword, because this is where the meme of no one gets inside came from. I liked the episodes, and I just wish they had done more.
Once a Ranger.
Once a Ranger, I like it for a lot of things. Then I freaking hate it because they had to introduce the son of Rita and Lord Zed, and I was like, oh, this really makes no sense. When did this happen? And it's never brought up again. So we have all this nonsense with him. But I did like the direction where they went with, the Rangers they picked, which was a decent bunch from Adam, Tori, like all of them I liked. It was like one of the few times that I was like, wow, I don't actually hate the Overdrive cast here. And they have a legitimate reason to quit. We got some growth out of it. The only negative was just that there was just not enough time for anyone, really. We get the whole, like, oh, everyone's just moving on. And it was like, we got like, 10, 20 seconds of each of the Rangers, going into different places, to the point where it was like, oh yeah, what do we do with Tyzon? He's the alien. What does he do? Oh, we'll just have him walk through a field. It's like, you guys really had no time to film or do anything.
Finders, Keepers, and Grid Connection.
Finders, Keeper, and Grid Connection. Obviously, Beast Morphers team up with not only Dino Charge, but with Dino Thunder and MMPR. Now, obviously, I can always complain like, oh, you didn't get the other actors from Dino Thunder and MMPR back. I think it was a decent team up because, okay, we got most of the Dino Charge cast, and then obviously we did have Shelby and Riley come back to do their voices at least, so we had all of the Dino Charge. It did suck that Ethan, Connor, Kira didn't come back for Dino Thunder, and all that kind of just felt shoehorned in. And the Sentai team up, that what it was adapted from, works way much more better, and I prefer that version. It was still good enough, especially, you know, Jason coming back. Even Forever Red, I always thought, you know, Jason kind of just didn't feel Jason, and I think they got him right over here. He leads the team, but he also wants to elevate everyone. He's always there behind everyone's back and saying, you know what, no, you're better than this, you can do better. And he's always very positive, and that's the reason why Billy became who he was in the later seasons. So that's the one thing I commend, you know, Jason doing in the whole show. So he felt much like Jason in this one. A lot of the older equipment and, you know, Zed's staff and all that stuff, that did get factored in later on in the episodes as they went along. So it wasn't just a team up for specifically here. It did add on to Beast Morphers story, and it was a cool way to integrate all those things. Even though the Dino Thunder team got severely shafted from this, I still enjoyed this team up very much. Could it have been better? Yes, but for what they were able to do, it was good.
Reinforcements from the future.
Reinforcements from the future. Now, obviously, you know, I don't really care for the Wild Force cast, and I did like this team up. It had, like, you know, a logical continuation of Time Force, how they can work together with Wild Force, and surprisingly, it didn't clash between the two styles of teams, because, you know, Wild Force and Time Force are very different teams, and Wild Force can be annoying, but, like, for one time in their lives, I was like, you know what, the Wild Force team actually works fine. You know, I wish some of the characters got more time to each other. You know, I also liked that they were trying to do something with Eric and Taylor. I was like, they would be the ones, like, if you wanted to have a relationship with each other, those two would work. It was a cool way to, like, mix Mutorgs and, you know, pay off what happened with Rancic and Nadira. And it's like one of the few times, if at all, where the bad guy from the previous season comes back and helps out in a very positive way.
Time for Lightspeed.
This one makes up for the lack of Ryan in the LG team up, thank God. And I didn't mind Viper in this one, oddly enough. This team up was more like a friend episode. All Power Ranger teams get time with each other, but this one felt more personal, especially with the jacket scene at the end. We get to see what happened to the Lightspeed team. Of course, Joel gets interrupted in his honeymoon. Danny becomes a doctor. Chad, I'm surprised he became a lifeguard. I was thinking he was going to go back to martial arts. The only real complaint I got, what revived Vipra? Is she like the designated lifeboat just in case everyone gets blown up? I always wondered if there was cut footage explaining this. This team up worked good as a single episode. There was just a few things that needed some expanding, like Ryan needed a scene with Eric. That also felt like something got cut out. My favorite moment was everyone using all their battle items. Probably the only team up to have that many characters with armor. If I had to pick which team up showcased the best parts of a team up, it would be this one.
Forever Red.
Now, I know there are many people out there who don't really care for Forever Red. It is very rushing all over the place. I wish it had more time. And if I had to give any episode to have it be a two-parter, Forever Red should have been it, because it was the very first time we had an anniversary. Orko being badly shafted, Leo coming in because Danny Slavin was busy, so we had to be green screened in half the time, or he was in his suit for a couple of seconds instead of being unmorphed. That sucked. Yeah, Jason was kind of out of character. That was the problem I had with Jason, because we had almost no type of, you know, familiarity, backstory of the character, because he was just generic leader and didn't do much. We didn't know he liked bikes, and because he was like left in the middle of season 2, but the plot was cool. I thought it was funny that they had the big bad Beetleborg suits step in that. Other than Jason's issue, all the other characters did get their moments. Everyone felt like they were. Wes and Eric came back, which was cool. Like, that never happened before. We had already had a team up with them, and they came back. And we got introduction to the Megaship Mark II. Andros is still doing his thing. You know, we got TJ's name. So it was a lot of good little nods. And, you know, because this was kind of the last hurrah of them filming in LA, it was a good ending for that original production team.
Always a chance.
Now we're getting into the big guns, always a chance. The whole team-up aspect was immaterial. It was solely because Adam and Carlos's stories. Power Rangers very rarely doesn't want to acknowledge the risks that they take being a Ranger. How many times does a Power Ranger say, you know what? Screw this. I am not good at this job. I'm quitting. Besides Will, Carlos had a reasonable reason why he didn't want to be a Power Ranger. Adam coming back. he was one of the few that actually was like the passing of the torch done right. So Carlos and Adam already had that repertoire together. I need to help him. He's lost his way. It introduced us to like what happened to the powers from season 2 after the Zords were blown up. Not just for like gear porn. It was the fact that Adam risked his life. So it was a big moment and kind of a closing moment for Adam. And it was also kind of like a throwback of the older days. They didn't have the money in the earlier seasons, so they kept everything very simplistic. And that was the closest we got since then, because, you know, Power Rangers kept, you know, going higher and higher and higher, and, you know, all through Turbo, especially when everything got blown up and we lost the command center and whatnot. So it was good return to form, excellent story for Carlos, and an excellent story for Adam.
To the 10th power and the power of pink.
Obviously, these were going to be high because it was the sacrifice of Kendricks. Even though I freaking hated that Kendricks had to come back at the end of LG, which made no sense, it was a wonderful way to end a story. Even though I really hated it because it was just like, well, we didn't have everything wrapped up, but for what they accomplished, we had an unresolved plot line with the Psycho Rangers. We didn't know what happened to them. Like, would they ever come back? What was going on? They took that little thread, and I was just like, holy crap, they went all out. Not just that, and they filmed original Zord footage. It's like everything that I wish they had done in like Cosmic Fury was done in this episode. You had so many things that elevated this story. You love the in-space cast. You love the LG cast. It was like, okay, it's brand new. We're starting over fresh. We're in this dome place. It was pretty cool. It had a high budget. On top of it, you had excellent villains, plus a major tragedy. It made such an impactful story. And I think it was the beginning of that step up where we went from In Space, which elevated PR from its lowest point of the time of Turbo, and then that stepped it up again. Wow, Power Rangers did this, and then Lightspeed continued that and stepped it up again. And then it culminated with Time Force. Power Rangers found where it should go. And I just wish we had, you know, met this type of quality again.
Thunderstorm.
Even all the positives I gave to the 10th and Power of Pink, Thunderstorm is my favorite team up. And it simply comes down to how well the Dino Thunder cast and the Ninja Storm cast worked. And not to mention, they brought in all the ancillary characters back. So it was a direct continuation of Ninja Storm. They didn't have to bring Sensei back. They didn't have to bring Mara and Capri back, but they did. There were so many characters in this show. There was 11 Rangers plus Sensei and all the others. Somehow they were able to balance everything, even with just 2-parters. Normally, I would say to do all these characters, you would have to do 3 or 4 episodes. Everyone got their moments where it made sense. Cam, Hunter, Blake, even, you know, Hunter, who I always had problems with, he got something positive doing this. Cam got his justice from Lothar. They ended his story, which I thought was hilarious the way they did it. I was like, oh yeah, Lothar basically died and he just got turned into the doll and the Geno randomizer. So I'm assuming when, you know, the lab was destroyed in Dino Thunder, he was finally killed off. We get to see, you know, Tori, Dustin, and Shane be evil. And then on top of it, we get to see how they work as teachers. And it worked fairly well. I was kind of worried, like, oh, how's Dustin going to feel like being a teacher? And it's like they were still able to blend them together where it was like, okay, it does work. Dustin can work as a teacher, but still be his stupid Waldo self. It was literally a perfect storm of characters, plot lines, and like a redemption of various other things that Ninja Storm kind of had problems with. Team-ups are such a difficult thing to do because you have to bring back an old character and like, do new kids care about that? Because, you know, you bring back Adam, and for most cases, the kid wasn't even born when that character was on the show at the time. They wouldn't really have a connection to it. So it's a very hard thing to balance from a writer's perspective. But also then to a fan like myself who stuck with the show for 30 years. You know the intricacies of the character when they return. And then anything that deviates from that, you'll be like, you know, that didn't feel right. I don't think the writer really knew what they were doing here. Or they were stuck with like I don't know who I'm going to write because they just picked random actors, and now I got to stuff them into the story. And in some cases, what makes it more complicated is bringing in the Sentai footage, which is like, that's why I always preferred, if they do a team up, do not adapt the Sentai team up. But it can also backfire because it's like, oh great, we're getting the season that sucked last time, so it does have that negative, but also that glimmer of hope, like, well, maybe they could fix them. This is their last chance they can, and in some cases they do. Like I said, Justin, he worked so well in that team up, and it redeemed him from my eyes because I hated him so much. Even though he was supposed to be the target demographic that I was in at the time. I was 11 years old when that show aired. I saw him for who he was, an obnoxious character that was being written badly. So I was so happy when he got fixed in the team up. You know, the various other team ups that were really great, or even the little small one-offs like, you know, Preston and Coda. I thought those were a little decent. But then, of course, you have those big blunders like the Legendary Battle. It's like, yeah, not that many TV series can pull this off. Now, if you have a suggestion or a topic you'd like me to cover, leave a comment down below and I may use it in next week's video.